How is it rocking, Dween Nation? Stay here because we are just about to get underway. In the meantime, please like, comment, and subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. We put out weekly sports content, and we want to continue to build up Dween Nation and the brand that is Dween Sports. Thank you all, and enjoy. Welcome in, Dween Nation. This is your host, Justin Paez, alongside Genoa Agudelo, and Week 4 has come and gone, and we are here to cover some insight into what Week 5 needs to be, and that is the Waiver Wire show. We got 4 names each that you guys need to make sure you put your waiver claims on, put your fab budget money on, and yeah. But before we dive into that, Genoa, how you feeling?
Yo, Dween Nation. Justin, I'm doing great. It was a great, Week 4 there. And, we had a fun weekend ourselves, Justin, out there in Dallas. And, hey, it was a great week. And, I'm excited to kind of break down to what's heading into Week 5. The season is getting more exciting. There was some key injuries, Justin, and we learned about some teams as well. So, hey, Justin, I'm excited to dive in and kind of kick off, not kind of saying goodbye to Week 4 completely, Justin, but kind of heading into Week 5 and looking towards that direction.
No, dude, I'm super excited. I agree with you. We had a fun weekend in Dallas together. The Aggies won, so I'm happy there. You did beat me in fantasy this week, even though there are some games left. It doesn't matter. You blew me out of the water, but it's still fun. I have to get back on the horse. But what Week 4 is a goodbye to. We get bye weeks now in Week 5, so that the waiver wire kind of is even more important. I think this is also where trades start happening in your league, so stay vigilant, stay active, and we'll start with the waiver show right now. At quarterback, I'll start us off. I have Justin Fields going at 34% roster percentage in ESPN fantasy leagues. Obviously, he had a great matchup last week against the Colts, and he put up big numbers for fantasy. He was a top 2 quarterback on the week, so he played really well. Obviously, they were down, so they needed him to kind of do some things. And we're headed into next week. And the reason I actually like next week, the Cowboys defense has been subpar this year, and now they don't have Micah Parsons. They don't have DeMarcus Lawrence. So I don't see the pressure that they'll be getting onto Justin Fields as much. And I think he's a prime pickup. Still only owned in 34% of leagues. Scoop him up there. If you have, Jalen Hurts on bye, or, oh my gosh, who else is on bye? Herbert's on bye.
Herbert. I think Jared Goff. I think the Lions have a bye week as well next week.
So anyway, with that, just stay vigilant and pick up a guy that he gets the rushing upside, great value for fantasy. He's a good pickup.
Yeah, Justin, you know how much I love Justin Fields this year. I think he's perfect with the Steelers. And you know what, Justin? This is going to be a guy by the end of next week. He's going to be owned in all percent of leagues. This guy's going to be a league winner. And you know what, Justin? He has solidified the starter. When we were going into Week 1 this year, if you want to look back on their Dween Nation, I was really high on Justin Fields this year. I think he just works better with the Steelers. He's younger, and I just think that Mike Tomlin and him kind of mesh together. I don't really think Russell Wilson is a Mike Tomlin kind of guy. I just think their personalities don't really mesh all that well. I do think Russell has a future somewhere else. Obviously the Vikings are balling. Seattle's kind of balling. Whatever's going on there in Miami could possibly not be too, hard to take a look at. Maybe in Las Vegas, as they try to save their season. But you know what? I love Fields, Justin, and you know what? He should be picked up on all leagues by the end of this week. He had about 34 to 38 fantasy points, depending on how your leagues are adjusted, but still an all-around great performance from Justin Fields. And then you look into his schedule, next week and kind of beyond. They have Dallas there on Sunday night. That could be a shootout, since you mentioned that defense in Dallas has some injuries. The following week after that, they go to Vegas. So that's going to be another kind of matchup where Justin Fields needs to show off how great he can be for the Steelers. Remember, he's playing for a contract, and as well as his future there in Pittsburgh. So they're trying to win that division. They just took their first loss there, Justin, but love Justin Fields for the rest of the year there. For me, I'm going to go with Trevor Lawrence there, who had somewhat of a decent game in Houston this past weekend. But Justin, I do like the matchup next week. Justin Fields kind of just torched the Colts defense in Indianapolis. Trevor Lawrence now gets a home game here in Week 5 against the Jaguars, and the Colts, and that could be kind of a shootout as well. Brian Thomas is developing well as a great receiver. And as well as Christian Kirk kind of had a bounce back game, and eventually they're going to be looking down at Evan Ingram once he gets healthy. But they have a guy in Strange there, I think his name is, at tight end, and maybe some dump off passes to Travis Etienne there to kind of boost Trevor Lawrence's stock. And they're going to need to win. They're going to need to win, Justin. They're 0-4 now on the season. The Jacksonville Jaguars are, and Trevor Lawrence has not been living up to the multi-million-dollar quarterback that he signed a massive contract not that long ago, and the Jaguars believed in him. He has a playoff win, and he's going to need to show that he is going to need to be that guy to help them win football games. So, when we have these bye weeks next week, not to mention here in week 6, there's a couple other bye weeks going down the line. So Trevor Lawrence is going to be the guy that you need to plug and play there. If you have Patrick Mahomes, or even if you're not starting Sam Darnold, those are guys that are going to be having bye weeks in week 6. And so, definitely going to need to possibly fire up there Trevor Lawrence.
I think Lawrence is a good pick, at least for this week with the Colts. I mean, just about everybody's gone off against the Colts, and we've seen Jacksonville actually start to cook somewhat on offense. Brian Thomas had a big game last week. Christian Kirk also got in the end zone, and we're expecting the return of Evan Ingram soon. So I expect this week to be a really big week for Lawrence. I think it's a good pick there. For me, on to running back, I have Trey Sermon. Obviously, he's the backup to Jonathan Taylor. The unfortunate news on Sunday, looks like Taylor suffered a mild severity high ankle sprain. I'd expect him to miss at least 2 weeks. And Trey Sermon's owned about nowhere. And I think the Colts are not going to look for somebody on, the practice squad or on a different roster. They're going to – Taylor's, his return is imminent. So, this Trey Sermon pickup is not, for the rest of the year, but somebody that you can, plug in for 2 weeks if you have a bye or if you have an injury. And I think he's a great pickup. I'm looking real quick. They play Jacksonville this week, which is a really good matchup for running backs. Then they play Tennessee, which is so-so. But regardless, if you're in that Shane Steichen offense, I think it's a great play every week.
Yeah, Justin, I really do like, Trey Sermon. He's got some touches there in place of Jonathan Taylor. I remember in week 2 getting the snaps at the end of that drive that they tried to, beat Green Bay there. He saw some snaps there, as well as, pretty much every week this season, he's been kind of thrown in there. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor is a star. He's the alpha back in that offense. So you don't want to throw Trey Sermon in too much. However, Jonathan Taylor did get hurt, and his status, for this weekend's, game in Jacksonville is a little in question. And I would imagine that, with the Colts, they got the starting quarterback hurt, and now their starting running back is hurt. And so they kind of paid these 2 guys a little here, there. And so you might think that against an 0-4 Jaguars, they might want to throw in Flacco and Sermon and kind of hope that they can, get another victory there. They have one kind of back-to-back. So I wouldn't be surprised if Taylor misses there, Justin. So I do like Trey Sermon there. A guy that I'm going to go with, Justin, he's not really off to a crazy start here in this 2024 season, but a guy just to stash there, and it's Roschon Johnson. With the Chicago's Bears backfield, obviously Swift scored this week. I know a couple weeks ago Khalil Herbert scored, but there's something about Roschon Johnson that the Chicago Bears really like, and I think that in the past 2 weeks they kind of been throwing him there a little bit more. And I think with this Bears offense, it's a little tough to trust this passing game with Caleb Williams. It's not what we expected so far. Keenan Allen came back. DJ Moore was able to score a touchdown. Roma Dunze played, but they still look lackluster in offense. I think that in the next couple of weeks they're going to have to rely on the run game. They do have 2 more home games in the next few weeks, and so I feel like they might have to rely on the run game. And what better than Roschon Johnson here? We're not really big on Swift, Justin. He did score. I know he looked good on that scoring play. But other than that, it's not really for sure that they really believe in Swift. And I think that Roschon Johnson's going to be a guy that they might be reliant towards the end of the year. So I think he's worth a lookout. I know a lot of these running back handcuffs are kind of taken up there. Maybe a Dowdle might be the best available running back out there. So why not just invest in getting Roschon Johnson, having a good stash there for that Chicago backfield?
I think Roschon is actually a really good play. Last week, Coach Eberflus said, "Hey, we're going to need to start giving him more touches," and they did. So I expect it to kind of just continually, maybe gradually increase as the weeks go on. They gave him a goal line rush, so he had that touchdown there. And Khalil Herbert he was active in the game, got 0 touches. So Khalil Herbert, who had been more involved thus far, is not being involved. Roschon takes that spot. And yes, Swift did have a good game, but for the other 3 games, it was very bad, very poor efficiency, and they were playing the Rams, which is a really good matchup. Now, what helps, I guess, both Swift and Roschon is their schedule right now. Down the stretch, they play Carolina this week. Easy matchup. Jacksonville, easy. Then they get a bye. Then they play Washington, Arizona, New England, and Green Bay. They're all plus matchups. So I think Roschon in this Bears team will start figuring out more of an established role, and I think it's only going up for Roschon. So I think it's a good pick, and you can try to get on him early. Moving to wide receiver, I have Dontayvion Wicks of the Green Bay Packers. Obviously, he scored 2 touchdowns this week against the Vikings. And the big news is Christian Watson leaves the game injured and is expected to miss time. So, and that's kind of what we had been talking about all offseason, kind of into this season. There's 4 really solid wide receivers in Green Bay. Jaden Reed's kind of the alpha, as we've seen thus far. But then it's like there wasn't an alpha like past Jaden Reed, or at least it's what we thought prior to the season. And Jordan Love was slinging that rock, and we're glad he's back because Malik Willis wasn't doing that. But now Wicks, he kind of is to me the de facto number 2 wide receiver, and I think they're going to be passing in these games, and it's a great pickup because Wicks is only owned in 9% of leagues, so he's owned in under 10% of leagues, has been involved. Has obviously chemistry with Jordan Love, and look at this schedule. The Rams, Cardinals, Texans, Jaguars, and Lions are his next 5 opponents. Christian Watson probably is going to miss most of those games. I think Wicks is a plug and play immediately.
Yeah, Justin, looking at Wicks there, he was a guy that was kind of involved early last year in the offense, kind of disappeared there. I know, Jordan Love was, struggling in and out last year. This is a guy that they kind of brought back there. And I really like that, he's kind of been more involved in this offense, and he will now that Christian Watson's hurt. Watson has had a lot of injuries over the past year and a half. He kind of had that little bit of a breakout with Rodgers in his last year in Green Bay. It kind of seemed to not really click with Jordan Love. We've seen some flashes, but it's clear that Jordan Love is going to be going to Jaden Reed. And Dontayvion Wicks kind of takes that wide receiver 2 spot, I believe, over Romeo Doubs there. I think that this is going to be some matchups the next couple of weeks where him or Jaden Reed are going to be kind of that guy that's going to go off. And Justin, he has 3 touchdowns on the season so far. And Jordan Love has barely played, 8 quarters in this year so far. So I kind of like the potential of him being maybe a league winner. Maybe, Justin, we look down later this year and see him as one of those wide receivers that broke out. We did expect Jaden Reed to kind of be that guy. He was drafted in some of our leagues, Justin. He wasn't drafted in others. But Dontayvion Wicks was the guy that we weren't looking at. We were even looking at Dobbs as well as Watson. And now, Wicks has the potential to take over. We're not really sure how serious his Watson injury is there, Justin. So definitely like, that Wicks pickup. For me, I'm going to go with Xavier Legette there as my guy to look out for. Since Andy Dalton has taken over, it kind of seems like Legette, little by little, is going to be that guy. Not to mention that Adam Thielen missed this past week. He's now on IR, and he was getting old. Like we mentioned earlier this year, he was getting older. And now, looking at Legette there, he's going to be that guy that's going to be that perfect 1-2 punch with Dontayvion Johnson. And looking at this past weekend against Cincinnati, Xavier Legette had 10 targets, 6 catches, 66 yards, and a tutty there, Justin. So he was able to balance there off with Dontayvion Johnson at 13 targets, as well as 83 yards and a touchdown. And, I kind of like this Carolina defense now trending the right direction. It's crazy that they benched their number 1 pick overall and brought in an old man in Andy Dalton. And now they're unbelievable. Now, this upcoming week in Chicago is who they're playing. That's a little bit of a questionable matchup. The Bears are pretty tough to opposing wide receivers there. But they do get Atlanta, and they do get Washington. 2 teams that could be a potential shootout. And Xavier Legette, he's little by little going to be that guy. And he's a guy that you definitely have to pick up now. And you know what, Justin, in the next couple of weeks, you can possibly start including him in some trades. Him and Wicks are kind of those upcoming wide receivers there in their offenses. Getting all the target share. So Xavier Legette, only owned in 25% of leagues there. We kind of knew this was going to be the thing, Justin. Eventually, Xavier Legette was going to be that guy to take the keys there in that Charlotte, offense. Carolina, there, he's that homegrown guy. And, now they are kind of molding him to be that, next wide receiver one there in Carolina.
No, I think it's a good pick. Leggett, obviously, with Thielen being out on IR, it leaves spots with obviously Deontay's kind of the clear alpha wide receiver, but Leggett, he can slot in right there perfectly. And 10 targets you mentioned, it's pretty good. Andy Dalton in this offense are finally cooking, and it's an offense you can kind of rely on every week. So I think
Um,
Leggett is a good pick.
I want to tell you one last thing. Maybe the Panthers might be one of those teams that are always playing from behind, Justin, kind of like they were yesterday against the
Yeah.
Bengals. They're a good offense. They're just not winning games, or they get kind of behind early, and that forces Andy Dalton to throw. So, yeah, I like Xavier Legette there.
I think that's perfect. Those are the best offenses to be a part of too. So I think that's great. Moving to our last phase of the episode, we're gonna do we got some defensive streamers for you guys. Defenses are kind of a pivotal piece to your team. I know some leagues don't do defenses, but they're such a fun ad to have. And we each have one to give to you. And I start with the Denver Broncos. They play the Raiders at home next week. And obviously, we've seen the Raiders really struggle besides the game against the Ravens this year. And it leaves an opportunity where the Broncos have been balling. They only allowed the Jets to 9 points last week, and then the Buccaneers 7 points the week before that, have scored over 15 fantasy points in the last 2 weeks. To me, it's kind of an easy decision there to pick up the Broncos defense, which we thought that team was going to be just too bad to rely on it for anybody. But the defense has really stepped up over the last 2 weeks. They're only 5% owned, and I think it's an easy pickup there.
Yeah, Justin, I definitely like that defense there. They are becoming one of the more surprises of the league in Denver. And they get those ugly matchups. They had a week 2 matchup against the Steelers, barely losing that. And they go on to Tampa Bay. And, this past week in Baker Mayfield looked phenomenal. But last week when he played Denver at home, they were able to stop him and kind of hold Mike Evans there. And not to mention, Justin, they have one of the upcoming premier elite corners there in Patrick Surtain, who got the bag right before the season started, or I think it was probably around week 2. And he's going to be one of those shutdown corners there. He had an elite pedigree there when he was at the University of Alabama. He could be in the mix there for Defensive Player of the Year. I know it's very early there, Justin. But a defense that I'm looking at here are the Washington Commanders, who, wow, had an incredible outing there in Arizona, locking down those Cardinals that we love this year. In quite an impressive fashion there. They were able to, even though the week before Joe Burrow was able to hang 33 points, they were able to make stops there. But, looking at their matchup this weekend, upcoming weekend, week 5, they play the Cleveland Browns, and, there's a lot of injuries, starting with David Njoku, starting with Dedrick Willis, who's out, their offensive lineman, their tackle. They have another tackle, Jack Conklin, who's hurt, and Wyatt Teller, one of the best guards in the league, is now out for the year. He's on IR. And so, this offensive line there in Cleveland is very beat up. And there's not really quite the alpha back there in Cleveland. It's no longer Jerome Ford. He's struggling a little bit. And Deshaun Watson, he's been under pressure a lot. That Raiders offense or D-line was able to get after him all day yesterday. And you know what? I like this Washington team little by little. They're becoming the force in that division. And, their schedule, it isn't quite bad, Justin, when you look at it. They get Washington in week 5, and then obviously they go to Baltimore week 6. That might be something where they're sitting. But, Justin, week 7, they're home with, Carolina. And then they're home with a Bears offense, but we're not too confident in there. And then they go to New York, and they play the Giants. And so that could be a pretty good matchup there where that defense is very stingy, and they're able to lock opposing offenses down. And so, looking later down the schedule, they do get like Tennessee. They do get the Eagles, who are struggling. Maybe A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are back there. But this defense, little by little, is getting better. And Justin, Washington is now 3-1, leading that whole division. So, just that is a team to now buy stock in. Obviously, that offense is on fire. But hey, the Commanders now, wow, rising up there in the power rankings. And I like their defense going forward.
No, I think it's a really good pickup. Cleveland's been one of the worst offenses in the league this year, And although, yes, you look at it in Washington, the first 3 weeks, look bad. The way they kind of commanded the Cardinals last week is kind of eye opening. And we know Dan Quinn's that defensive coach, so maybe that defense is starting to click. So I think that's a good pick there. And that wraps up our waivers. We had four selections each that you can go up, pick up somebody. We've declared you should start them, or if it's like a stash player. So choose wisely. If you need him now, pick up the guy that you can start right now versus a guy you can pick up later. But yeah, thanks for listening, guys. And Jano, send us out.
Yo, Dween Nation, those are waiver wire pickups. I know tomorrow everybody's going to be fishing for those, bye week fillers there. And this Justin's where fantasy gets interesting. And Justin, you have a saying where waiver wire is the reason why, is a big part of the reason why championships are won in fantasy, Justin. So this is the starting week there, Dween Nation, where you are able to get closer and closer to your championship aspirations there, because players like these are what wins championships there, Justin. So definitely this was a fun episode. Dween Nation, thanks for listening. We have many more episodes there recapping week 4. We love you guys, and as always,
Peace.